Well, I'm here today with Matt Hartranft, M&A attorney with Brutlag Trucke Doherty, which is a business, finance, and real estate law firm here in Minneapolis. Matt, really excited to have you here. We've gone back a long time. We've known each other for quite a while, and I've, of course, tapped you on the shoulder for some help on some things in the past. You have a wealth of knowledge, and just really excited to have you finally join the podcast here today.
Well, it's a privilege to be here, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
So getting into, first I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of background, because you got a really unique story and background, kind of how you got into being an attorney. So just for a bit, take us back to kind of your path into this field, this career.
Yeah, well, like any business owner, right? That's how I kind of came up in my business of the practice of law. It just happened to become the business of the practice of law. But as many of our business owner listeners can relate, there's a little story behind it as to, well, how did you end up in your line of work, in your business? And that's really how I look at our law firm here in Plymouth, Minnesota. A small law firm comprised of business owners who happen to be attorneys. And that's really how we've built our, camaraderie with our clients as fellow business owners and kind of team members. And that all started, I think, way back when I was working at a small bank and then a larger bank, Key Bank National, a bigger bank out west, and was managing some of the branch operations there and encountering all these interesting business needs on both sides of the table, and realized, you know what, I should be at a different place at this table. I really should go back to school and get a little more training. Turned out to be a lot more training and a lot more work.
But I'm sure it's been worth it.
But it should be the practice of law, and I can do more with that than I can representing the interests of a financial institution. My love for the law really started in Venezuela during a service mission there, where we helped Colombian refugee families obtain Colombian immigrant and Venezuelan immigrant documents without consulate processing. Translation, people were able to stay married in the country without getting kicked out when the regime changed down there. So, seeing what the power of the law could do to families and family-owned businesses there in South America, I said, you know what? I bet it could do something like that for people right here in the United States. And if I go to law school, maybe I can make something of that. So that's really what inspired me to be working with families first through their businesses. So the companies I represent, I'm sure we'll get into that, but generally I'm with closely held companies. And so my clients are family members, they're managers, and they're owners of their company.
Sure.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And, I know I'm going to get into some of that more certainly as we move along here too, but you've got another interesting aspect. You're part of a advocacy group it does work in Bolivia.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I am one of the several attorneys who serve on the board of directors for a absolutely wonderful organization, right? Based with an office right here in St. Paul, Minnesota, called Mano a Mano, which translates in English to hand or hand in hand. Mano a Mano is a 30-year-old now. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary. A 30-year-old now organization that does major infrastructure projects in the country of Bolivia. This includes building schools, hospitals, reservoirs, farms, and farm education and agricultural education centers. It is, in my humble opinion, the most effectively operated and most efficiently operated nonprofit organization I have ever come in contact with. And it's a privilege to have been serving on the board of directors there since 2005.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's really, I know just in the conversation we've had over time too, that it's a fascinating project and really neat advocacy you put together.
Oh, absolutely. If you're looking for a charity this holiday season, look no further. Take a look at Mano a Mano.
All right, let's get into the M&A world. All right, let's just kind of touch base and get into what, as the market stands now, and you kind of, you've been in this for a while, of course. What's the market like now? How have things changed? Are there trends you're seeing right now in this market space, whether it's interest rates or inflation that's impacting activity in the M&A world?
Yeah, great question. Really, what people more and more want to know the answer to, I hope they want to know it more and more. I think they are asking the question more and more, what is my business worth? And my theme for this year, my highlight, or I should say, number one question I want my clients to know the answer to this coming year is, what's my business worth? Because to your question, there have been some major changes or some major trends with what the Fed's doing to interest rates. I think that's clear. The banks, the major financial institutions are projecting some continued basis points drops, some continued interest rates drops here through the rest of 2025. Significant enough, we would think, to continue to catalyze, I think, good deal flow and good volume in the mergers and acquisitions space that, of course, I work in. And even if the interest rates don't come down substantially, though, there may be some other critical reasons why business owners are continually trending towards wanting to be poised for an exit. And that's really the right terminology is, are you poised for an exit? And number two, what's your business worth today? More and more, I'm seeing business owners want to know the answer to those two questions.
And on that point, are you seeing, and what you're recommending is be poised for an exit, even if you're not looking for an exit now? Just have the business ready, have your house in order effectively.
Exactly.
Be poised for an exit. Yeah,
because I think more I honestly think it's largely due to what we've all just been through. Call it the last 4, but really call it the last 6.5 years, where we went through some of these man-made and natural disasters, where depending on where you live, maybe more one side than the other. And certainly our hearts are with those who are still kind of suffering through the damage down south. But people are realizing, you know what? I need to have a state of readiness. I need to be maintaining a state of readiness, because there's less within my circle of influence and control than I thought before. And so more and more, especially people who are beginning to get into that later stages of business ownership, and actually, frankly, even those who maybe don't have 10, 15, 20 years of business ownership under their belt, but are realizing, I really have built something here. Can I leverage it? So when we ask the question, are you in a state of readiness in your business? Are you poised for an exit? That doesn't necessarily mean poised to exit 100% of your ownership. That could also mean, are you poised to take advantage of some leverage opportunities? So all of those questions are more now trending than they were, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. I strongly hear that from my client base and new people coming in.
Interesting.
They're better prepared. They're asking more of the right questions, less of a deer in the headlights reaction to, I got an offer for my business. And we hope that trend continues, because it makes for a less expensive deal for the client. It makes typically for a better due diligence process.
Okay. Yeah. So on the point of it, so if I'm a client or if I'm a business owner, how soon or how far along the process would I want to engage with an attorney to say, let's start to get poised for exit? When does that start to take form?
What a great question. And the typical attorney answer is, well, it depends. Right? So in this case, that answer applies, because it depends largely on who you're already working with. Your attorney really should just be one of the counselors who you work with. Ideally, you've got financial advisors who are very intimate with you and your goals and what it is that you're hoping to get out of your exit. Because here's the problem as an attorney that I'd love to see solved more, is that the statistic is somewhere around 45% of everyone exiting their business within the last 3 years reported when surveyed that they were sad they sold.
Interesting. Why?
Isn't that a higher number than you'd think?
Yeah.
It surprised me too. And
why is that?
It's largely because they don't perform an adequate gap analysis ahead of time. And by gap analysis, we're referring to, well, what is it going to take for you to maintain the lifestyle that you want after your exit? Number two, Is somebody willing to pay that number? And if not, additional gap analysis. What does it take to get your value up to that number?
Yeah.
What what enhancements can we help you implement?
Sure.
Now, that's not always on the attorney. It really depends on your attorney. Some attorneys, like at our firm, we do much more of the business consultation, value analysis, really that dovetails with your accounting team and your financial advisor team. In other instances, maybe you don't have an attorney that works that way, and they're just strictly going to be doing document drafting. But either way, you want to integrate those team members so that they are familiar with each other, and so that they're really helping you get to that point where you're poised for that exit.
Yeah.
You have that state of readiness right there, ready to go.
Yeah. It's interesting you
yeah,
bring up
yeah.
the numbers or the thinking that gap analysis, because we come across that with clients we work with who own a business or in process of selling their business. And one of the things we'll kind of think in terms of like, let's look at cash flow modeling. Let's look at how much are you spending and how much is the business worth and how we project kind of your lifestyle after the business. And what's an interesting exercise is a lot of times it's hard to determine what you're spending when you're involved in the business, right? Because the business pays for some of the travel and the vehicle expenses, and certain things get written off here. And so you try to get a handle on like how much are you actually spending or what's your number. And it does require kind of getting into the weeds on trying to figure out what are you actually spending. And the thing we recognize or observe too is it tends to be something that changes over time, which is normal. Meaning if you think you're going to spend this, it may actually be something above or below that, and that's okay because you don't have to land on it exactly. But the point being is getting relatively close as you're going through that process. Yeah,
and that's why I would say it's not 3 years before you think you'll sell your business is not too early to be engaging with legal counsel.
Yeah.
3 years, if you're not engaging with you, at least that engagement might be limited to, hey, I'm preparing a plan with my financial advisor to exit my company in 3 years. Done. Okay. But you're putting it on your legal counsel's radar, and good legal counsel will then ask, fantastic, who else is on the team? Who's your financial advisor? What do they know? How experienced are they? And partly the reason for that is going back to my original highlight, which was, what is your business worth today? Because so often in these transactions, not fully understanding your number, your value, but also what in the heck is that number based on? Because one of the jobs of a savvy buyer is going to be to beat you up a little bit on, we think it might be worth a little less.
Yeah.
And that can come up early. It can come up at the letter of intent phase as very early stage due diligence begins to kind of come out of the woodwork, but it can also happen the week before closing. It can happen on the day of closing. You can walk in and they'll say, actually we changed the number a little bit.
Yeah.
And here's why.
Yeah.
And you want to have a solid understanding of the financial analysis that went into that number. And developing that can take a little time. But just like if you're preparing for court, you want your evidence, right? And you want a nice stack of compelling evidence so that when somebody comes in that 11th hour and challenges all of your convictions, right? You can say, nope, we're still this number, and here's why, and here's why.
Yeah.
Here are the market comparables, but also here's how our account. Now, we understand that you might be able to argue with a straight face. There's more than one way to get to the ultimate number. Sure. But guess what? We looked at all those different ways, and this one's the most reasonable.
Yeah.
So to have really good financial counsel and really good financial advising, be working together with legal, is what helps that kind of come out.
Yeah.
And come out without a delay, because that's the other piece. And I'm getting ahead of us a little, but the other piece is that time kills deals. How often have we heard that? Right?
Yeah.
Well, did you close? No, we're still not closed. Or, well, it just got dragged on too long.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it anymore. It was 3 months involved
Fatigue
in this crazy process, and we just said we'd get a pause.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the phrase going back to your numbers and kind of having the evidence, how important that is, because it's the phrase, something to the effect of, if you torture the numbers long enough, they'll tell you anything you want.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to that, and having your evidence. And we see that too. And when we consult with our clients as they prepare for that final closing, to be ready for that 11th hour change and understand your financial picture, that if it gets discounted by 10%, does that work or not? Know in advance of that, so that you can be informed to make the decision that, yes, we'll proceed, or no, we're pulling the deal and we're walking. Be ready for that. That's the important part of getting your team together.
Yeah. And also understanding, where are their give takes? You know, we love give takes, right? It's okay. Well, if you're going to take that from us in the form of working capital, because you're going to try and beat us up over working capital, was legal counsel savvy enough to negotiate certain other forms of consideration? Because in many of these transactions, you could have a retainer, or you could have a severance package for one of the key, maybe the only owner of the business.
Yeah.
There are different ways to split up a balance sheet when we're analyzing working capital, looking at, what are we doing with accounts receivable? Who keeps what? Where do we draw that line?
Yeah.
And maybe that's based on a date that's earlier than closing. So especially if we're in manufacturing, or we're in retail, and the way different goods and services are exchanged between the company and their end customer might have a big impact on how we split up that working capital, that cash and cash receivables.
Yeah, wow.
The accounts receivables.
There's a lot that goes into that. You're right.
There is, and that's kind of the other piece of the job is, can we not only shepherd a transaction effectively, but do it in a way that doesn't take the feeling of control away from the owner, so they truly feel they're in the driver's seat, but without them feeling overwhelmed, without them feeling like they're just not enough help along the way.
Yeah.
So that's really where the fun, that's what really makes my job fun, is that each transaction is different because every person's different.
Yeah.
You have different levels of savvy, different levels of expertise and technical expertise. And you really have to kind of get to know someone. Hopefully, like we said, you've got some time. But if you don't, I mean, frankly, most of the transactions that I get that come in, it's an accountant, it's a CPA saying, we got an offer for this business and it's a really good number, we think, and help us know what to do next.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. We can work with that. No problem.
And that's coming in late in your, like, in an ideal world, it's already, ideally they would already engage with you before that point. Is that right?
Yeah. If they've been a customer of ours for a month and a day, then they're on track to generally have a plan for an exit strategy. And we don't always do that all ourselves. Sometimes we'll help them with their existing counsel.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for us, is to preserve the relationships that are already there and take as limited a role as we can.
Yeah.
But as full a role as we need to. So that's how we work anyway at our firm.
Hey, real quick, thank you for tuning into this Well-Balanced podcast brought to you by Vector Wealth Management. We're a full-service, fee-based wealth management firm working with clients across the U.S. We do financial planning and investment management for individuals and families. If you are new to Vector and would like a portfolio and plan review, go to our website, vectorwealth.com, and click on the free assessment to get started. And now back to our show.
But it was one of the Exit Planning Institute of Minnesota's events. And it was a very brilliant, very savvy brokerage owner, small business brokerage owner, I believe, who was speaking there, who presented on those numbers. And it just stuck in my brain.
Yeah.
The whole presentation was so good. That's a very good company, by the way, Exit Planning Institute of Minnesota.
Okay.
Especially if you have never heard of Key Strategies. Julie Keys is someone who I love to work with. In fact, I'd have all my clients working with her if I could. And she's just a tremendous resource. I believe that's also some of that data comes through her research and some of her program.
Yeah.
So, but I think that predominantly it just goes back to what were your specific gaps for you and your company, and which ones weren't addressed early on? Meaning, you didn't have a comprehensive plan.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, that's a good way to think of it. Let's go back to the comment you had on time. You said something to the effect of time, the passing of time kind of stalls deals.
Yeah, time kills deals.
Time kills deals.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the things that get in the way of? What are some of the things that drag out the time, and how do you kind of help offset that, or how do you kind of?
Yeah, good preparation helps a lot, because, like I mentioned earlier, if you have strong evidence, strong financial evidence to back up your positions, then when you go into that negotiation, whoever it is that's on the other side of your negotiation, it becomes a more timely exercise to reach a consensus. If you're not educating the other side on your position, you might be leaving some money on the table. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I recently did a deal for a waste management company. We're selling a waste management company, and the owner got an offer at, hey, this is more money than I'll ever see. Right?
Time to call Matt.
The offer was, $5 million for his waste management company.
Yeah.
And what hadn't been done was a comprehensive analysis of the market. Who are all of the potential buyers? Well, okay. Why would I need to know that? I got one. Okay, well, let's just humor us. Okay, let's make a list of who all the potential buyers might be. And taking that approach allowed us to identify that there were some strategic reasons to, before signing any restrictive covenants, like, you're not allowed to talk about the offer, or you're not allowed to tell anyone you got an offer. Early on, they'll want to restrict your ability to leverage the fact that you just got a nice offer for your company. Yeah. They'll want to take all those options off the table.
Yeah.
So it was really smart that even though he didn't call us until he got an offer, but he called us right after he got that offer. That gave us some wiggle room, because we were able to do that analysis with full transparency, let everyone know we're going to disclose to the marketplace that we got this offer, and we're going to open it up to a competitive bidding process. And in the course of doing that, with the buyer that we ultimately selected, of course, they had come back. That gave us a little time to work up our financial evidence that we referred to earlier. They'd come back and started beating us up over our inventory. Oh, okay, look, the inventory for a waste management company is like dumpsters and carts. So try to ask me if, it's obsolete. I don't care if that cart is 40 years old. It's a cart. Okay,
it's not rusted with
it doesn't need to be pretty. It's the same thing it was if it's new versus it's 30 years old.
Serves the same purpose.
But if you didn't, and there's several examples of that with trucks and other equipment, if we didn't have a solid evidentiary basis to be going back to opposing counsel and saying, you know what? Remember how early on in the letter of intent phase, we set certain caps and baskets, we set certain marks. In other words, we used our leverage early on before we lost it by signing that letter of intent too early. We already negotiated those positions. Now, would you like us to provide you our evidentiary support for why those were our reasonable positions? Because at this stage later on, now a month down the road, it's not equitable for you to be hitting us with an adjustment on the purchase price by virtue of telling us that those items are obsolete inventory requisite. So it then puts the opposing counsel in a position to have to say, yeah, you're probably can't argue that with a straight face. The more we can set you up for that kind of an interaction with the other side who's tasked with making you feel small, but you get to feel big because you're poised for exit. You got ready, and you entered into that negotiation process with someone who's experienced, who's been there before. And that's financial. I can't stress that enough. It's the financial planning side, it's accounting, and it's legal. It's at least those three.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's also estate planning, some other areas.
Yeah. And what I take from that too is that if you get that offer, ideally you're already working with somebody on your team that you already have a process or kind of a group that's already working with you. But if you get that offer to not sign anything, so you don't get tied up to some offer, some restricted covenants that don't allow you to explore it.
That's right. And punchline, people want to know, so what did he sell the business for?
Yeah. Let's go
$9.5 million.
Wow. So almost double what that original offer was.
Yeah. And two things went into that. I'm saying $9.5 million net. A big piece of that was he had come to us and said, I don't want to have anything to do with this company ever again. I just want to go do farming. Fantastic. Don't tell them that.
Yeah.
Tell them that it's really important to you that you get to, you may even want to go and continue operating you may start a new waste management company.
Yeah.
You were good at it this time. Do it again. Do it 4 more times. So that meant that those restrictive covenants then were worth a chunk of change.
Yeah.
Oh, you want me to restrict my ability to open a new company after closing? Because I was planning on opening 2 more waste management companies.
Yeah.
You want to take a competitor out of the marketplace, that costs a little more.
Yeah.
But the other piece that got that number to almost double was after we mapped out, okay, who are the buyers, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
What are the geographic territorial considerations that would make one competitor in the industry want you over another having you? Almost to the point where it became, we will pay anything as long as they don't get the territory that he's built. So that doesn't always happen. But imagine if, you just felt like maybe 5 was a good number. I remember standing up. I mean, we actually sort of wet eyes. Okay, we were kind of tearful because the celebration for that successful deal was, come on out to my farm. Stand up here on my combine and look out over this field. And can you tell, as far as you can see, Matt, look out, that's all my land. That's my farm now. My dream came true.
Yeah.
Everything I ever hoped would be realized from all the last 10 years of stress and toil. This is my dream. And here's 24 eggs. That was such a neat experience.
Yeah, what a cool story.
To be a part of that dream, to be a part of, and then actually get to stand up there and in this beautiful farmstead and see all of that having happen.
Yeah.
And so we all got choked up over that.
Yeah,
that
that's
was
cool.
A really neat experience.
Well, it's fun to see those success stories too and being part of that, right? As you helped unlock that value for him, that family, right? That's a meaningful amount. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's why we do what we do, is to have those kinds of experiences for sure.
You mentioned that deal size, and you went 5 to went to 9.5. What's a typical deal size that you or your firm works with?
Yeah. Oh, honestly, let's just talk enterprise value, I guess. I do transactions. I'm doing one this week. I just closed one this week that was like $190,000 deal, selling a snowplow business. So we'll do the small stuff, absolutely, all on up to $100 million, give or take.
Okay.
And I have experience with okay, translate that. Typically, these, like I said, these are closely held companies, LLCs, partnerships, C Corps, and the number of employees is between 1 and about 150 employees.
Okay.
And a typical industry for me, I do a lot of construction, a lot of manufacturing, some software, and some medical engineering, medical tech. There's a wide range, restaurants and retail as well. Things like power sports dealerships, for some reason, has been something that I've been getting a lot of calls on over the last 3 years, partly because word got out. We did a couple that were really very, very successful for the owners, and then the buyers as well.
Okay.
So word kind of got out. I'd say we, in terms of sell side versus buy side, because people want to know that too, I'd say about 40% of my deals I'm representing the buyer.
Okay.
Yeah. So decent sell side deal flow, but that's a pretty good chunk on the buyer side. Of course, when when you're on the sell side, you lose your client in a way because you sell their business. So then that business becomes something else.
Yeah.
But I'm in contact with the people who generally they're coming back and they're asking more questions as their legal needs evolves.
Yeah. Well, great. This has been a great discussion. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up?
Well, that's a good question. Only that it's the holiday season. Okay. So aside from all this business stuff we've been talking about, remember that holiday spirit. If there's anything any opportunity that comes along to just show kindness, the world can use more kindness. So my plug of all the business stuff I plug is that I love how kindness and everything builds trust.
Mm-hmm.
And trust will help your deal, but kindness will help your trust. So showing kindness to others this holiday season, that's my thing.
Yeah. Well said, Matt. Thanks a lot for joining
Cliche,
today.
but still my thing. Yeah.
No, but well said.
Thanks.
I appreciate you joining. Thanks for being here today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for listening to our podcast. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Be sure to consult first with a qualified financial advisor and/or a tax professional before implementing any investment strategy.